This week we're featuring a Commander deck tech based around a card from the upcoming Aetherdrift set. This video is sponsored by Flipside Gaming. Check out flipsidegaming.com for all your gaming needs. Right now you can pre-order Innistrad Remastered, Aetherdrift, or find a vast number of other great items on their website. Remember, shipping is free in the US if your order's over $100 or consists only of singles. Just look in the description or the comment section below for direct links to their site. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another Commander deck tech video. This time our commander is a card that's not even out yet. It is Daretti, Rocketeer Engineer from Aetherdrift. I will tell you, I had a lot of fun putting this deck together. It truly feels like battlecruiser magic. Now I'm sure Aetherdrift previews will reveal some more cards that will be good in this kind of build, but I'm very happy with the initial deck list here. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that these deck tech videos go out to the gold patrons and the Hero and Legend tier channel members on Sundays. Then on Wednesday afternoons, they're available to everybody. And I do want to thank one of the gold patrons today, WolfOfTinStreet Band. Well, thank you for all your support on Patreon. It goes a really long way. I know I say this all the time, but I truly could not do this without viewers like yourself. Thank you so much for everything, Wolf. And now without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright, here's our commander, Daretti, Rocketeer Engineer, a red and 4 legendary creature, Goblin Artificer, star and 5 for power toughness. Daretti's power is equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. Whenever Daretti enters or attacks, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return the chosen card to the battlefield. Okay, so there are a few ways you could go about building around this. You could go combo heavy like the Gitrog monster deck we built last week. You could even include some high-end cards like Wheel of Fortune, for example. However, this time I opted to lean heavily into what Daretti can do instead of filling the deck with side combos. There are 4 parts of the strategy I wanted to focus on. First, we need some high casting cost artifacts to build Daretti's power. The value of the mana cost of your highest casting cost artifacts at any given time will be Daretti's power. Secondly, I wanted to include artifacts that give us a benefit when they go to the graveyard, leave the battlefield, and or when they enter. Ultimately, we'll be wanting to trade cheap artifacts for some expensive ones, and we want to create situations where we gain advantage by sacrificing an artifact to return another one from the graveyard to the battlefield. Thirdly, we need to make sure we're getting those big artifacts in the graveyard so we can cheat them out with Daretti's ability, or with cards that have similar abilities. And lastly, we need ways to get Daretti's damage across. So let's jump into the 99, starting with our 1 Planeswalker. It is Daretti Scrap Savant. So the -10 here is nice, but that's hard to get to, so I'm more focused on the other 2 abilities. The +2 lets us discard the targets that we want to cheat onto the battlefield, plus we get to draw more cards. The -2 ability actively lets us juggle our artifacts from the graveyard to the battlefield and vice versa. So what kind of high casting cost artifacts are we running? Let's take a look at the artifact creatures that cost 7 or more mana in the deck. Whenever possible, I want these huge artifacts to give us some kind of benefit or a way to push the deck strategy forward. Cityscape Leveler and Meteor Golem not only buff our commander's power, as long as either of them are the highest casting cost artifact at the time, but they also act as pinpoint non-land permanent removal. While Bosch Iron Golem will be sacrificing an artifact, but at the same time it weaponizes it in order to hit any target with direct damage. Phyrexian Triniform and Triplicate Titan are 2 9 casting cost creatures that break up into smaller creatures when they die. I would probably rarely use the Encore ability on Phyrexian Triniform, since I want to be able to juggle a card like this back and forth from the graveyard to the battlefield as much as possible. Our next 2 creatures have high casting costs, but good board presence and actually protect us. Platinum Angel and Platinum Empyrean make us hard to deal with. Regular removal that sends these creatures to the graveyard usually won't be good enough since we're going to have a lot of ways to just bring them back. Su-Chi Caveguard can ramp us into casting something else big. If we were to sacrifice this to bring a different big artifact creature out of the graveyard and then use the 8 mana to put some other giant artifact on the battlefield, that would be a pretty good turn. Sandstone Oracle is here for card draw and for its high cost, of course. Next we have Mere Battlespear, which helps you go wide some, and again there is value here if the card goes back and forth from the graveyard at different points of the game. Threefold Thunderhulk also helps you go wide, plus it gives you an option to sacrifice another artifact. It even makes Thunderhulk more powerful in the process. And here are our last 4 high casting cost artifact creatures, but there's some good ones here. Ancient Stone Idol becomes cheaper to cast when you're being aggressive, and it has a solid death trigger as well. Cybermen Squadron gives these beefy non-legendary artifact creatures Myriad, which is quite good and could even be game-winning at times. Metalwork Colossus costs 11, which is great for Daretti, but we have some big non-creature artifacts in the deck too, which you're going to see in a moment. It even gives you the option to sack 2 artifacts if it's in the graveyard in order to bring it back to your hand. The card really is perfect in this build. Finally, Mycosynth Golem has 11 for the casting cost, but it does have affinity for artifacts, plus it gives affinity for artifacts to all your artifact creatures, which may help you throw a lot of power and toughness onto the battlefield from your hand if need be. Now let's look at some of the big non-creature artifacts we're running here. Darksteel Forge is awesome. Artifacts you control have indestructible. That can be backbreaking in some board states. Darksteel Monolith gives you another way to get your big colorless spells out of your hand. Excalibur Sword of Eden can really buff Daretti. It has 12 for the casting cost, and it gives plus 10 power when equipped, which would result in 22 power and vigilance for Daretti just with that one card alone. Then we would just need a way to get that damage across, but stay tuned. Finally, here with Portal to Phyrexia, you can clean up the battlefield and then start taking creatures from any graveyard. Okay, now let's look at some of our lower curve creatures and artifacts, starting with cards that support our graveyard interactions. Feldon of the Third Path lets you make a token of a creature in your graveyard. It has haste, so you can attack or use a tap ability, and then you sack it at the end of the turn. Remember all the huge creatures and death triggers we saw earlier? This works with tons of stuff in the deck, including those creatures that break up into smaller tokens. Goblin Engineer can get smaller things back from your graveyard, but more importantly, it lets you put a card from your library into your graveyard. In this deck, that's pretty much a tutor. Goblin Welder is another way to trade artifacts. Scrap Welder helps too, but it's a little different. Next we have Combustible Gearhulk, which is basically just card draw in the deck, since I would be shocked if an opponent would let you mill and potentially take a ton of damage from what you mill off the top of your build. Then we have Milliken, which is a mana rock that lets you mill on a stick. Mere Retriever has a death trigger that could come in handy. Scrap Trawler is another way to juggle your artifacts. Solemn Simulacrum has great enters and dies triggers. And Wormcoil Engine is another creature that gives you tokens when it dies. Next we have some non-creature artifacts that support our graveyard and juggling strategy. Ichor Wellspring, Microsynth Wellspring, and Prize Statue are all cheap and have great enters and dies triggers. These are the kind of cards you want to be sacrificing early on to cheat your big expensive artifacts and artifact creatures into play. Now let's see the rest of the creatures in the deck. We have Crime Novelist. This is just going to grow and give you mana while you sack your artifacts. Marvin Murderous Mimic and Treasure Nabber are solid support cards too. Marvin takes on the activated abilities of your creatures, and if opponents have to use a mana rock, Treasure Nabber makes sure you have something new to sacrifice until the end of your next turn. Okay, let's finish up the artifacts. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. They both give haste and protect your key creatures, especially Daretti when the time comes. Now here's some more equipment in the form of Ember Cleave and the Reaver Cleaver. Ideally, you want to get Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots and one of these cards on Daretti to attack for big trample damage. The Reaver Cleaver can also make treasure tokens, and remember, those tokens are artifacts, which can be sacrificed as well for value in this deck. Curse Mirror is a versatile mana rock, Mind Stone is good to have in a pinch, and Sculpting Steel potentially could copy a beefy creature or other powerful artifact. Next we have some ramp, which will help you get the engine running quicker, Mana Vault, Soul Ring, and Thran Dynamo. Finally, for artifacts, we have a little color fixing to make sure you can get red mana when you need it. Here's Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, and Mox Opal. Although to get red mana out of Felwar Stone, at least one of your opponents must have a land that can produce red mana. Like I said at the start, I tried to show some restraint when it came to expensive cards, but there are a few in here like Mox Opal and Mana Vault. Remember though, they can always be switched out for other options. Okay, before we get to the instance, just a fast reminder, this video is sponsored by Flipside Gaming. Check out flipsidegaming.com for all your gaming needs. Right now, you can pre-order Innistrad Remastered and Aetherdrift on their website, but they also have a whole lot of other items, MTG related and otherwise. Remember, if your order's over $100 or consists only of singles, shipping will be free in the United States. And if you're looking for a direct link to their site, just check out the description or the comment section below. I do have links posted in both of those places. Now, without any further ado, let's get to the instance. Alright, we got Big Score. It lets you discard to fill your graveyard, and you get to draw 2, plus you get 2 treasure tokens, all things you want to be doing with this build. Demand Answers lets you sack an artifact or discard in order to draw 2 cards. Thrill of Possibility lets you discard and draw 2 cards. And Unexpected Windfall is the same as Big Score, but with a slightly different casting cost. Next we have some instants to protect you and run interference. Abrade, deflecting swats, and untimely malfunction. Now onto the sorceries. All 4 of these are different takes on discarding cards in order to draw cards. Cathartic Reunion, Faithless Looting, Grab the Prize and Seize the Spoils. That last one gets you a treasure token too. Scrap Mastery might not always be necessary, but if you need to recover from a board sweep or if you just fall behind, it could be great. Trash for Treasure is another way to swap an artifact on the battlefield for one in your graveyard. Blasphemous Act might be the board sweep you need to recover from. This is nice to have as a panic button. As for enchantments, first we have Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This does a bunch of the things that other cards in this deck already do, but it's all on one card, which is awesome. And our last 2 enchantments are Electropotence and Sneak Attack. These 2 work well together, but they are good on their own too. Electropotence represents a way to get damage across as you are juggling your creatures back and forth from the graveyard. Sneak Attack lets you get a card from your hand onto the battlefield, and then at the end of the turn it goes to the graveyard. With all the good enters and dies triggers in the deck, combined with all the ways to then get your creature back out of the graveyard, Sneak Attack could do some work. Okay, on to lands. First we have 2 artifact lands, Darksteel Citadel and Great Furnace. They can be artifacts that you sacrifice or bring back in a pinch, plus sometimes the number of artifacts you have will matter. Fomori Vault will let you dig for a card, and Gaia Reach Sanitarium impacts the whole table, but it lets you draw and discard, which again is something you're looking to do. Okay, more utility lands here. Buried Ruin lets you get a card back from your graveyard to your hand if need be. Command Beacon lets you move your commander from the command zone to your hand. Inventor's Fair will gain you a little life and let you tutor for an artifact as long as you have at least 3 artifacts. And Rogue's Passage is a great way to get damage across, especially for Daretti. Next we have Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep. This makes your legendary creatures, including your commander, more formidable. The Mycosynth Gardens can copy an artifact, and it has other abilities too. Urza Saga is expensive, but if you have a copy, it's going to be great here. The tokens could get quite big, or you could use them as sacrifice fodder. And War Room gives you card draw for a reasonable penalty in this monocolor deck. Next we have some ramp options with Ancient Tomb, Temple of the False God, and Treasure Vault. Treasure Vault makes treasure tokens, which can be useful to sack as well. And in case you end up needing to hardcast some big things, here are some Urza lands. Urza's Cave, Mine, Power Plant, Tower, and Workshop. I also included Forgotten Cave since it gives you red mana but has cycling. And finally, to round out the deck, 12 Mountains. So that's the build. I'm really looking forward to playing with Daretti Rocketeer Engineer. This version of the deck has a lot of cohesive interactions without feeling like you're just trying to assemble a particular combo. Like I said earlier, I will be looking for more cards that could be good in this build as Aetherdrift previews happen. Hopefully we will get some more tools, but let me know if you're planning on building around the new Daretti and what cards you were thinking about using in the comments below. Until next time, hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.